Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Couch Projections. This is the amazing Kerbal Space Program, which I'm sure I don't have to introduce to anybody who's watching, but that's the name of the game. So this is going to be a very special episode of Couch Projections. I actually recorded over 2 hours of continuous footage the other night playing this game, and I have sped up that footage to varying degrees throughout. So some of it, like this, is playing at I think 10 multiplier speed, and some of it is playing at just regular speed, and some of it goes even above 10 multiplier, I'm sure, because there are some of the interstellar drives that are very, very long. As you can see here, I'm building a satellite. Right at the start, you might have spotted that I did not use a command module. Instead, I'm using just the automated computerized satellite. That's because I do not intend to bring this vessel back to Kerbal. Today's mission is going to be to Eve. I've never actually been to Eve. The best I've ever done in this game to date is Minmus. I landed on Minmus. I'm very proud of that. I've yet to land on Mun. So there we go. I'm setting up the group commands right now so that I can do my science all together as a group. I think I make 1 or 2 mistakes, but that's beside the point. As you can see, I have 2 of the Science Junior modules, 4 of the goo containers. On the top, I have solar panels, and then down along I have 1 central rocket as the core module, and then 6 around the outside in what is called an asparagus design. This means that as the fuel is used from one tank, that one jettisons off, and then the fuel all moves to the next tank along the way. So I like to launch in daytime, so I just quickly time accelerated there. And now we're launching. You just saw 1 tank already drop off, and you're about to see another one. Sorry, 2, because it's mirrored. I think it's already gone, actually, now that I think about it. This is quite fast. This is quite heavily accelerated, obviously, in the game. It's much, much slower. There we are. Yeah, we're down to already just 2 side tanks and 1 central tank. And there goes the last of the side tanks. So each time that happens, the remaining tanks have full liquid fuel and oxidizer, which means that we are maximizing the use of each engine at each stage. It basically means that we're using all the engines to get up out of the atmosphere, and then as we get further into the atmosphere, we don't need as much thrust, so we drop off the weight while still maximizing the amount that the remaining engines allow for. So I'm just looking for a good exit strategy here to get into the inner systems, and I think I've found it. But on the way, we are going to have a brief encounter with Mun. Mun is one of the 2 moons of Kerbal. So there we go. So as you can see, this is a really pretty game. So here we go. Let's have a look at the. So this is Kerbal Space Program, and there are thousands. Well, there are a lot of mods available online. I just like to play the core game without any mods. One mod I have installed, and the only mod I've installed, is a non-game changing mod. It is the beautification mod available. So it has added beautiful cloud cover, and if it was on the dark side of Kerbal, you would see some city lights. Although there are no cities on Kerbal when you land, the only buildings are the Space Center and 1 or 2 hidden locations around the map. There are no major metropolitan areas. On the night side, it puts in little light effects as if there were cities there, which is really, really nice. The other thing I learned while I was at this section of the game, which is why I slowed it down to show you, not just to show you Kerbal, but when I was setting up my RCS thrusters, which are those little thrusters that are just firing there inside the craft, I forgot to set them to 4-way symmetry, so it's only 2-way symmetry, it's only bilateral symmetry. So I only have 2 RCS thrusters, which makes maneuvering this giant rocket quite difficult, and which is why I'm spinning slightly uncontrollably around Kerbal, near Kerbal Space right now. In fact, you're about to see that the way I end up maneuvering this rocket for most of the time is on a left-right trajectory. So I line up the node that I want to be at, either to the left or right of my ship, and then I boost into that, depending on how I want to go. It was because of my mistake with the RCS thrusters, it was the best I could do. So there we go, we've lined it up, and we are boosting out, and we achieve Kerbal escape velocity. So there's Mun, we're just passing by Mun. Hi Mun! Bye Mun! And behind us is Kerbal, which you will get a brief view at before it disappears off into the distance. So we are now exiting Kerbal. This is a really cool game. The physics are amazing, and I have watched lots and lots of videos to figure out even how to get this far, but it took a while. So now we are out of Kerbal orbit, and we are in solar orbit. We are orbiting the sun. So I'm just looking for. At this point, I decided, should I go for Duna? Even though I have called my ship the Eve. What is it? Eve attempt. I thought maybe I could go for Duna instead, because Duna is an interesting planet to visit. It's basically the Mars equivalent, and it is a very popular one by a lot of players. But I thought for my first attempt I was going to make it a little bit difficult and head for one of the inner planets. So because I have to slow down rather than speed up, and you burn a lot more fuel, and by all accounts it's much harder to get to the inner planets than it is to get to the outer planets. It's very hard to get to the sun. So right now I'm just setting up an orbit that will bring me down. You can see I've just burned all my thrusters, and I believe that's the last of. We're actually down to. There we go. There you can see the pod flying away. So that means that I'm down to my last stage, engine stage, which is actually a very low power engine, but it's great in space. I mean, obviously you've got no gravity to contend with. So we're just doing a few orbits because of the power, the engine, and because I'm down to my last fuel stage. Rather than attempting to burn a huge amount in one go, which I wouldn't be able to do anyways, I didn't have the fuel to do it, I allow myself to orbit several times until Eve and my ship come close together. There's a wide angle where the two of them match. We just went past it there, where we travel along each other's plane. Apart from that, Eve is inside my orbit for most of the rest of it, so it's moving faster than me. But the idea is that eventually we will crash into each other, more or less. We're already at 397 days at this point, so this has been a long, long journey, but thankfully there's nobody on board. One of the main reasons why I did this is because I didn't want to have a Kerbal stuck in space. I do feel really bad about the Kerbals when I leave them in space for quite a while. I have yet to lose one, but that's mainly because of reloading. So we're just trying to set up an approach here. As you can see, the markers in the top of the screen. There we go. We just got our approach. When it turned purple, there we go. That's our approach. So the markers came together, and that means that at that point, if we burn for 42 hours, according to this, which is pretty bad. I think that's 42 hours. I would never have the fuel to do that. No, 42 minutes. I'm sorry, 42 minutes. I still don't have the fuel to do that. If we burn for that amount of time, we will hit Eve. We'll get caught in Eve's gravity for a brief moment, and then we'll have to adjust ourselves. So we turn around, and in fact, that was incorrect. We only have to burn for a minute. Sometimes the game gets a little bit confused about how much power your engine has, so you just have to burn a little bit and trust it, but then it readjusts itself, and that's probably what happened there. It often happens when you save and quick save and reload, which reminds me, that's what I've done just a few minutes ago, and it becomes very, very helpful. Quick save is F5, and then you can reload from that by pressing and holding F9. Thankfully, I had saved because this happens. So I get my wonderful encounter with Eve, and now I am trapped in Eve's gravity for a brief moment, but I will be ejecting straight out of it because of the speed I'm going at. So I set up a nice encounter to bring myself down and make a horrible realization. If you look at the top right hand of the screen, you can see electrical charge is at 0, despite having lots and lots of solar panels all over the front of my satellite. My satellite is now facing away from the sun, and thus is getting no energy. There we go, I think I just made the realization. So all those solar panels are for naught because I cannot burn, I cannot do anything without charge. And my batteries are dead because they just store up extra charge. So unfortunately I fall out the other side, hit reload, and try again. In fact, I go through several attempts before I make this anywhere near successful. So I reloaded to a point before I actually made the encounter, so I have to reset my encounter node. But having done it before, I'm kind of familiar with where it needs to be and how much it needs to be done. So there's my encounter node, looking pretty good. And this time I turn off some batteries, so that's my new thing. I switch off some batteries so that they're not using power. They're fully charged, but they won't expend their power until I ask them to. I have to reload again because I screwed up again. Now here we go. So I turn back on the battery, spin my ship around, and I'm back up to full charge again, giving me lots of charge to prepare another node and attempt an encounter at Eve. However, as you can see, I run out of liquid fuel. So yeah. Whoops, back to reload again because I'm just going to shoot straight out the other side. I'm very, very tight on fuel here. So let's slow this down a little bit. So I've turned off 2 of my batteries to conserve battery power for a little bit later on. This is starting a new run. So I've turned off 2 of my batteries, and we're going to spin around the sun at like a good pace. You can see Eve coming up beside me there. The purple planet just turns green as I highlight it. 2 of us are in close proximity, although astronomically close proximity. We're actually millions of miles apart at this point. And we slowly come in, and Eve attempt finally makes the approach and hits right now, which I slow down. So yeah, you obviously don't want to overshoot it, so I slow right down just before that happens, just so I have full control. And there we go, we're in Eve gravity again. So this time I have it's more or less the same amount of fuel, low electric charge, but once again I can zoom in and adjust that electric charge so that I can spin my ship around and face in the proper direction and refuel. You can see immediately, as soon as I start to turn, as soon as one of those panels comes into the light of the sun, it starts building up charge immediately. That's really it. I literally needed it for that one little bit. You can see the RCS thrusters just burning there a little bit. They're going to become very, very important in a few minutes. But right now we're just building up some electric charge before we make our adjustments and start heading for Eve. So I create another node right on the apoapsis, which is the high point beside Eve's gravity pull. You can just make out Eve underneath my ship there, I think, if you're looking very carefully. It's a purple planet. Here we are burning, and I'm all out of fuel, but I do have monopropellant. Monopropellant is what runs those RCS thrusters, and I decide to burn those. Now, they usually are really tiny amounts of thrust. They're usually for maneuvering, for lining up with stations, or for just adjusting your heading, and are not usually used for actual burning, but they do have a velocity. They do change your velocity sufficiently that in emergency situations such as this, you could burn a lot of monopropellant, and it just happens. And there we go. We have our circular approach. It just happens that I happen to put a lot of monopropellant onto the ship. I don't know why I did it at the start. I think it was just for the sake of symmetry, but I put 2 large monopropellant tanks onto this vessel. So I'm just bringing my periapsis in closer to Eve so that I will have a nice encounter with Eve. It's at 5 million meters out. And I will stop it at, there we go, 48,000 is probably a little low, but I can adjust that. There we go, 100,000 seems pretty good. So at this point I'm 120,000 meters up from Eve on my closest approach, my periapsis. So we're zooming around, and I almost miss it, but there it is! My first view of a planet other than Kerbal in my own game. A nice up-close view at 175,000 meters and dropping. I do a little bit of science, and I decide not to transmit it right there and then. When you do science in this game, as of one of the more recent updates, you can't do it again. So I want to make sure I get the maximum amount of science out of that. At the periapsis, once again, the high point. Sorry, the apoapsis, once again, the high point. I bring my periapsis point down closer to Eve, down to 100 kilometers, 100 meters even, and 100,000 meters, so yeah, 100 kilometers. And again, we swing around that planet. Look at that sunshine. It's just, this is such a beautiful game. Such a beautiful game. See Eve zoom out there, and once more we bring it down. So this time we're going to do a thing called aero braking. Whoa, that was a bit fast. As you can see, if you look at the top of the screen, you can see my atmosphere is increasing, and my apoapsis is dropping. That's because I'm actually hitting the atmosphere of the planet, and that's slowing me down without me having to use fuel. That's a fantastic ability and very important on later missions. One I haven't quite mastered yet, but I pretty much get the hang of it here. So my apoapsis is now well within the orbit of the moon of Eve, which is something I would like to have, because if it's outside that orbit, there's a chance, slim as it is, there's a chance that I could run into that moon on one of my orbits as I fly around. So my apoapsis is now nice and still very high. I mean, it's 3.5 million meters out, but my periapsis is very, very low. So there's the planet below us. Nice view of Eve. And we're going to just do some science and probably leave it at that. So yeah. So thanks for watching. This has been a really good episode. I actually put this together just out of interest. So there we are. I'm just doing some science and sending it back to Kerbal now to enhance my intelligence on my solar system and my knowledge of my solar system. So we're just bringing it in a little bit more before we leave this vessel orbiting Eve for eternity. We also bring the periapsis back out of the atmosphere just here now, so that it doesn't continuously slow down, because then after a couple of orbits it would just crash into the planet, and we didn't want that to happen. Despite the fact that I probably will never be coming back to this ship, I thought it was nice to leave a relic floating in space. Thanks for watching this episode of Couch Projections. It was very interesting to put together and to record the dialogue for, the narration for, but I hope you enjoyed listening, and I will see you next time, hopefully for more Kerbal Space Program at some point. Goodbye!